We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, and I'm very excited that we have another guest. And this guest is Kristen. She's a favorite amongst the listeners, and she always has some great insight. She's in Los Angeles. She is a former producer of reality TV, but she's gone into saner things now because that's fucking insanity doing that. But how you doing in Los Angeles today? I mean, the fires are behind us. The wreckage is still there, but there's still got to be a lot of trauma in California.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for asking. And I just want to say hello to everyone, and thank you so much for watching and being here tonight. Um, the beginning of the year did not start out so great for Los Angeles, that's for sure. We got a lot of rain about a week ago, and it made a big improvement in the quality of the air. Of course, there was some worry and fear about mudslides,
Right.
and then also all the debris. But I was just looking at Governor Newsom's Blue Sky feed, and he said that they're doing ahead of schedule on picking up all this toxic debris. So obviously it's a large scale project across the city to, haul all of this stuff out. So that's what they're doing now. But the quality of the air is a lot better. And the congressman in my area obviously has been dealing with a lot because the congressional district that I live in was the Palisades fire. So I was giving him a little leeway. It's Ted Lieu, and he was very vocal against the Trump administration first time around. And so I was giving him a little leeway, but I call regularly and I actually do talk to aides all the time. I call the local office here in Los Angeles. And now that we've gotten through the fires and things are more, being handled now, he has been a lot more vocal. So I can already see where when you are pushing your congressperson towards what you want, you can definitely have that progress be made through persistence. So I've seen him on TV a number of times in the last couple of days talking about, what's happening with um, I hate to even call it Doge. It's like the criminal hacking of our federal IT system is a more
Right.
accurate definition. But I've seen him on TV a lot more. So I feel like, okay, my phone calls have worked and it isn't for nothing because he's back out there and speaking up. And I think over the last week or so, I've seen a lot better energy from the Democrats. It was really disappointing. They seemed to come out just flat footed with the fire hose that we're, still under, a month and a half in. But I feel like the tide has started to change in this last week, where it felt like everybody felt so defeated and the Democrats were letting us down so badly with inaction. But it feels like the town halls that we had, the phone calls that we've been making, the protests that are happening, the boycotts, it feels like that energy is gathering and a shift is happening where people are waking up and, sort of realizing this is not cost cutting. This is something very serious is happening to our federal government.
You are a big advocate of people calling and emailing and writing letters and protesting and such. But what people have to know is you're quite a role model with that. You're pretty diligent about doing it. You do it a lot, and like you say, it's bearing some fruits now. This has got to make you maybe even more motivated to continue to do what you do because we got a long way to go.
Yes, and they're trying to exhaust us. So I've also, since the last time I was here, I feel like I've turned a corner because I did a lot of grieving at first. And I would cycle through like disbelief, anger, bargaining. I was just all over the place with coming to terms with what I knew intuitively, the depravity of these people that are running the government right now, how absolutely just awful, horrible, despicable people they are, and the horrible, despicable things that they are going to do and are doing. Um, and we were saying this before the show, but one thing I realized is that these people want to be their worst self. So I'm going to be my best self. And I made a commitment to that on Blue Sky to be very active and vocal there. And I got the attention of Congressman Eric Swalwell, who follows me on Blue
Right.
Sky. And I'm one of 6 people that he follows, the only non famous person. The other people are like Hakeem Jeffries and Mark Cuban. And
I will
I
say this though. I
also,
will say that
yeah.
you've been on the podcast like 3 times. You're pretty
Mhm.
famous. You're pretty famous.
Thank you. I want to inspire people because I know calling works. We saved the Affordable Care Act via John McCain, and I called that office, I don't even know how many times. It works. And where we are right now, and I had this realization right before we got on the call, we need to be targeted with who we're calling and what we're doing now. So before I was basically like, just call your reps, call, 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 call. Where we're, I think, going to find ourselves in the next couple of months, and I can't even believe I'm saying these names because sometimes the enemy of thy enemy is thy friend. But Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski are going to be the 3 pivotal votes that we could have that can stop things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
Those three is so I just want to let everybody know you don't need to only call your congressman. We can also call Jasmine and AOC and say thank you because we need to praise the people that are doing it right. And then we can also start calling Susan Murkowski or Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell's office. And I can't even believe I'm saying I would call Mitch McConnell's office, but I will. I will.
it's interesting. You mentioned AOC and Jasmine Crockett, and people really like them because they're vocal and they speak out and they're smart and they're not afraid to go head to head with people. But what I find really interesting, and I'm wondering if you know the reason why, I think I do. Um, AOC will say the things she says, and she's a little more subdued than Jasmine Crockett, um, but she's pretty strong about it. And Jasmine Crockett will come up and say, "What would you say to Elon Musk right now?" And she said, "Fuck off." And I love that energy. Here's the interesting thing: AOC says something, they come after her. The Republicans come after her. Nobody comes after Jasmine. You don't find that interesting? They never come after Jasmine.
I have a theory about that. I'm glad
So
you
do
said
I.
that. Okay. So I am in a world of love and light. I work in holistic healing. I'm a Reiki master. Love and light will not work in this particular situation. This situation calls for a spiritual warrior. Okay. We have to match energy. Jasmine Crockett gets that. She matches their energy, and that's why it is effective. She humiliated Marjorie Taylor Greene with that
Absolutely.
comment that she made. Marjorie has never recovered from that when she called her the bleach
Bad body,
blonde
bleach
butch.
blonde,
I mean, she
bad body.
annihilated her, and that's why they're scared of her. That's why they don't come after her, is because they know she will annihilate them and she's clean as a whistle. She's not taking money. She's not taking bribes. She's not taking all kinds of dirty money. She's not beholden to corporations, so they have no leverage on her.
Well,
Okay.
it's the premise I have about bullies too. My experience with
Mm-hmm.
bullies come up to you and make threats, and they push you and they do whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
the way they win is if you become fearful of them and you back off and you bend to them. The moment you push back, slap the taste out of their mouth, or get back in their face, that's when their cowardice comes out and they back away. And Jasmine Crockett represents somebody who's going to mix it up with them. AOC is going to take the high road, and that's fine. I don't suggest you should change your style. I mean, I get the same thing. There are people, I've said this before, there are people on TikTok that do the things I do, and they'll come out weeping, and people said bad things to me, and they made death threats against me. I don't get that shit. I mean, I get people saying bad stuff occasionally, but I don't get any death threats because I pose somebody who's going to push back. And I think that's an important thing for us to understand. That's the energy we need now. We don't need to be bullies. We need to be the bullies of bullies. We need to match the energy and we need to be strong and tough and aggressive and assertive if we're going to beat back these pieces of shit.
Absolutely. And being authentic to you is really important in that. And
Yeah,
that's why both of those ladies are effective, is because it is authentic to both of them. I imagine that Jasmine in her life has faced people underestimating her at every turn. Because she is a
absolutely.
woman of color and beautiful, people probably thought she was stupid. Okay. And she obviously is not. So this is not her first rodeo with people underestimating her or trying to count her out. She's also gone against that really crazy one, Nancy Mace, I think is her name. That woman is
Yeah.
like completely, like, there's something very seriously wrong with that woman. Like she's not um like not normal at all.
She's
I
emotionally
think
broken.
yeah, something's very wrong there. And so I'm hesitant to say it because I know she's a victim of SA. And so my heart really breaks for her. But she is an example of, you've got to go get help if something like that happens to you. Okay. It's not your fault, but you need to go get help so you can get stable again. You've got to go to trauma therapy, get a healer, a coach, something that's right for you. If that kind of trauma happens to you, you have to be responsible for healing yourself.
I'm not going to say that she's faking about the sexual assault. I don't know that. Apparently, she's had some evidence, but this woman does some pretty crazy shit.
Yeah, really unhinged.
She's not opposed to lying. I mean, she ran, didn't
Yeah.
she run out of the women's bathroom saying there was a transgender person in there and she was screaming and yelling, and that wasn't the case at all.
Yes.
She'll do anything to prove her point.
Yeah. It's, remember when I talked about how a lot of these people have personality disorders?
Yeah.
So I think the other thing we've got to understand about the bullying and the people who are backing down is that there are Democrats who are compromised. There are Democrats who have taken the money somewhere along the line that are not 100% clean. And I guarantee you they are being blackmailed and or threatened right now. And I think that's why we've seen Fetterman cave. I don't think he's squeaky clean. I think there's stuff in his background. He's never struck me as a squeaky clean kind of guy, but we had to go with him over, was it Dr. Oz or whoever horrible person the year he was running against. When I was a little girl, my granddad, who saw through Ronald Reagan and couldn't even believe we had a literal actor as president, told me sometimes you're not voting for someone, you're voting against the other guy because he's an even
Right.
bigger crook. So that's what we're at up against a lot of the time, because you have to remember Putin got the emails from the Democrats and the Republicans. He released the Democratic ones, kept back the Republican ones. So both sides are compromised from those emails. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing here is that these bullies are so treacherous, they are threatening and or blackmailing members of Congress on both sides. That's just my theory, but I think that Madison Cawthorn let the cat out of the bag, remember? And then they kicked him out of Congress because he said
Right.
they were having the wild parties, right? And these Republicans were having the wild parties, right? So there's Donald Trump is actually known for that, of getting dirt on his enemies to then have leverage. He's been doing that for years.
You know, when Madison Cawthorn said that about the orgies with the members of the House,
Yeah.
I'm scanning the crowd in the Republicans in my mind of all the Republican members of the House. And I'm thinking, I don't know that you'd call that an orgy, maybe an atrocity. I mean, it's just,
It's disgusting. It's
it
absolutely
is pretty
disgusting.
disgusting.
It's so gross. But that's, I think, one of the things we've got to understand that we're dealing with. The other thing that I think we need to understand that we're dealing with is the patriarchy rather burn the whole thing down than level the playing field for women, minorities, disabled people, elderly people, people who are different in any way from them. And I always had that as a theory. And if you listen to creators of color, if you listen to people of color, they will talk about this, that has been their theory for a long time as well, is that the patriarchy, rather than give up any power, literally today voted for elder abuse. I mean, that's literally what they're voting for by cutting Medicaid. They rather commit elder abuse. They rather tear down the most vulnerable members of our society than level the playing field at all for anyone other than themselves. And I think when we understand that, we can stop being surprised and going from like moment to shock moment every day with what they're doing. When we understand that, I mean, yes, cruelty is the point, but anything that they can do to hold on to power, they will even hurt their own members to do
Yeah.
so.
Well, I want to talk about this big, beautiful bill because there's a lot to talk about there. Before we do that, you mentioned before we came on that you wanted to bring up something about uh, a couple of the lives we did and some of the Trumplafucks that showed up on that live. It's been a while since the Trumplafuck showed up, and I know what you're talking about, but you
Yeah,
had
I think it
something in
might have been
mind
the
there.
last one. Yeah, I think it was the last live that you had. And the first thing is, what cowards? They come on the show and don't even turn on their camera.
Yeah.
That's what cowards they are. I'm coming on this show and I'm saying, you can find me at Kristen Healer at Blue Sky. This is where I am. Come say hi to me. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is my background. But they are cowards because they know their positions are morally wrong. They know that what they're about to say is morally bankrupt. And so they're hiding from the beginning. One of them was a particular moron. And also, he let his family know, especially the women in his family, he let all of them know he doesn't give an F about them. He actually said, this is one of the biggest morons you've ever had, because I've seen several of your when you have them on. And the level of stupidity is beyond. He actually said he preferred tough talk rhetoric than real action.
Yeah. Yeah, I told one guy, I said, he said, I like his policies. And I said, what are his policies? And they couldn't give me a
He
single
can't,
policy.
no,
That
no.
they had no clue what the policy was. Another guy said, I like him because he's no bullshit. I said, you mean like no bullshit when he told you the prices were going to come down and just the other day he told you they're going to go up? That sounds like bullshit to me. And I said, I've listened to you people, and I've come to the conclusion that it has nothing about politics that you like about Donald Trump. You're a fanboy punk ass bitch that's in a fucking
Yeah,
cult. That's all it
yeah.
is. You think he's cool because you're not cool. And that's the only reason you like him. And whatever he says, you're going to back him just like your favorite heel wrestler on the WWE.
It is absolutely the persona they like. It is the fake tough guy because he's actually not a tough guy at all.
No,
And that's what I'm saying is they know they are morally bankrupt. They know that what they are saying is wrong. We know that by the fact they won't even turn on the camera. Okay.
no.
And that's what I'm saying about they will burn the whole thing down. He just voted for his wife to not vote. He just voted for his grandma and grandpa to come have to live with you because the memory care and the nursing facility can't be afforded without Medicaid help. And he's ready to burn the lives of everyone around him down so he can watch TV like WWE wrestling and cheer on his favorite fake tough guy because he's famous reality star. It's the same thing as Ronald Reagan. We had a literal actor and we have a literal actor here because he is just a figurehead. If we ever wondered if a president is a figurehead, that's what we got right now. And we had even talked about this before with who's going to win with the Elmo and his ego, and he's even letting Elmo take over and gladly doing so because they are both owned by something so much bigger that he literally is like powerless in that role. It's very odd that they're worshiping someone who they think is all powerful and talks all this tough guy stuff, but he's actually so weak.
Very weak, and it was epitomized in the cabinet meeting he had. He's there with, I'm looking around the room during the video or the live coverage of the cabinet meeting. I'm looking around the room, and it's like the world's largest clown car because every one of these people is unqualified, criminal, or something. You got Navarro sitting there, fresh out of prison. You got Pete Hegseth just trying to come down off a hangover and working on the next one. You've got Stephen Miller, creepy fucking Stephen Miller, just looking creepy. And he's sitting there at the cabinet table, Donald Trump is, and there's Elon Musk standing over here. You notice how Elon is always standing, like hovering over everything. He did the bulk of the talking. And I got to say, for a guy who claims and then people think he's smart, he is one of the most inarticulate motherfuckers I've ever seen. He can't keep a thought straight, whether it's drugs or his own ignorance. I don't know what it is. But you saw who had the power there, and it wasn't Donald Trump. It was Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And he made a fool out of himself on top of it.
Yeah, and then he said something about, oh, well, we made a mistake and cut all the Ebola funding. Well, I don't know if you all remember, but if it wasn't for the Obama administration, that could have become a terrible pandemic through Africa, and they nipped it in the bud.
Yeah.
And so that would have been, pretty disastrous. And he's like, haha, well, we're going to make mistakes. The thing is, they're playing Russian roulette with people's lives right now. What I can say on a positive side is you were just saying all of that. And, and like it is like a clown show. It literally is just a clown car of just one racist after bigot, after misogynist, after alcoholic, after personality disorder, is that this is not going to last. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know what. But I know that 360 million people are not going to go from land of the free and home of the brave to a fascist authoritarian rule without having something to say about it. That's not going to happen. And like I said, I can't say exactly what is going to happen. I don't know, but I just know this isn't going to work because they're not even good at being bad.
Well, well, I mean, the perfect example is Elon Musk. He's going in there suggesting that we're doing all these good things and cutting all these costs. But the fact of the matter, and he acknowledges one mistake. Well, he's got several mistakes. He let go of the people who were overseeing the bird flu. Whoops, we got to get them back. He let go of the people covering the safety for nuclear energy. Whoops, we got to get them back. He's got a list of all the things he's cut. And he says, $8 billion we saved here. Whoops, it was $8 million. One other thing was $100 million or 100, whatever it was. And he counted it 3 times. Everything he's doing is fucked up. And part of the reason it's fucked up is because it's a smash and grab. He's just doing it fast because he knows his time is limited. He's trying to get as much done as he can. And when you do that, you fuck up frequently. Now he's in good company with Donald Trump because Donald Trump always fucks up. When you have 2 fuck ups trying to tear down this country, eventually it's going to go wrong. It's going to go against him.
I couldn't agree with you more. And they are doing a smash and grab. That's a really good description of what they're doing. I was at the hair salon, which is a good way to get a cross section of opinions. Okay. And everybody at the hair salon, that particular just a couple of hours, were Democrats and Kamala voters, because sometimes you'll have a mixed crowd of Trumpers. And, but they all are CNN and MSNBC watchers. And they actually believed that Leon was doing a legitimate audit with his internet minion hackers. And I was the voice of like, hello. And I do like talk my talk and walk my walk. I was like, okay, I need to educate everyone right here because that is the smoke screen. That is not what's happening. Okay. That's not what's happening at all. And I found out that if people are only watching CNN and only watching MSNBC, they actually believe that he's going in there and cutting waste. That is not what he's doing. That is the smokescreen. That's the lie, so that people don't completely freak out that what they are doing is called a state capture. And a state capture is where unelected people go into a government and steal data, resources, and money in an effort to seize power. And yes, it has to be done really fast before anybody realizes what's happening. He needs a tremendous amount of data to put into the AI system that he wants to own for this country, and even put a chip in your head if you'll let him, or maybe even not. And that AI system needs a massive amount of data so it can discriminate against the people they want it to discriminate against. So the data, the harvesting of all of that federal information is one of the most vital things that he needs to feed his AI software. Okay. The other part is that they are putting worms, Trojan horses, backdoors. They are putting in malware into the system to the point of it not being able to not have to be rebuilt. I have a good friend who works in IT at one of the major studios, and he builds large mainframes and has experience in these large IT systems, right? A comparable type of IT system to the federal government would be one of the large studios, okay, with all of the information they have. And he jokingly said to his wife the other day, would you want to move to DC in a couple of years because they're going to be hiring? So according to him, all of our systems will have to be rebuilt. We will not be able to trust any system because these 18, 19, 20-year-old hackers, 21-year-old hackers don't know what they're doing. They are being told just to flood the system. And he believes, and this is not me saying, this is an IT person who's a friend of mine. He believes that Leon wants a kill switch to everything so he can be in ultimate control, that they're building a way for him to kill the whole system, decide who gets payments and who doesn't, lock whatever generals out. He wants to lock out via his phone on his app.
Wow.
Okay, like he did with the election, right? So he wants to have the ultimate control via IT. That's part of the state capture, right?
I had somebody ask me, say, well, they're just auditing the system. I said, please explain to me
No,
please explain to me how they're doing that. I mean, there is no accountants there. I think we can agree if you're going to do an audit, you need somebody with some accounting ability. All you got is poorly complected techno twinks in there wreaking havoc and doing vandalism. That's all they're really doing.
that's exactly what they're doing. They are vandalizing it and leaving their little mark, right? They're leaving their mark. So that's what happened in the hair salon is everyone thought that they were doing a legitimate audit. These are Democrats. And they were absolutely stunned when I came in going, well, no, if you want to do a legitimate audit, you hire a forensic accounting firm. Okay, you hire an independent company that then starts to forensically account all the different billings and accountings for each department. This is about destabilizing our federal government so that they can control. Okay, this is about them having all the money because they owe Putin. Okay, this is about them bankrupting the US dollar, bankrupting our treasury, stealing all the money out of Fort Knox so that there is no gold standard, so there is no US dollar to back anything up, and they want to have their crypto. Okay,
Yeah.
they are willing to burn it all down and kill seniors, kill babies in the NICU. They don't care because they want to have the state capture and control it all. And it won't work. That's why I don't want anybody to be scared, but I want everybody to understand what's happening so that if you have someone who is uninformed and who thinks this is an actual audit, you can inform them they need to go to wired.com and immediately subscribe to the newsletter. They are doing amazing reporting on what is actually happening within the actual when the little minions go in there, what's actually going down, the names, the places, the times. They're the ones that broke all of their names and basically doxed them, but they deserve that at this point.
Absolutely.
And so if you have anybody in your family, in your friends who still thinks it's a legitimate audit, I mean, believe me, I blew everyone's mind at this salon. Okay. Even my hairdresser was like, whoa, Kristen, how do you know everything? I said, because I'm on social media. I don't watch CNN. I don't watch MSNBC. Someone even commented the last time I was on the show that they had looked for information I was talking about. You're not going to find any of that if you Google it. You have to go to DuckDuckGo and you need to start reading other or if you have a VPN, but you need to start reading the news from outside the US, like The Guardian, like BBC, and then you will at Reuters, and then you will actually get real news stories. But The
Right.
Wire is doing breaking, amazing reporting on what Doge is actually doing. So I highly recommend go to wire.com, get the newsletter, and tell anyone who is uninformed or just a CNN watcher, because if they're watching CNN, they have absolutely no idea what's going on. That's what I found out. They don't know. And that's a really good way just to get that newsletter and come it right to your inbox and be much more informed about what's happening with the teardown of the federal government.
I want to bring up, because this kind of goes into um, the budget deadline of March 14th. We had this bill that passed through the House. Now, I don't quite understand. I don't know if that's the final bill that's going to be in the House or not. And they tried to play the game where they're going to make cuts on different committees or departments or something. So they didn't have to say Medicaid, or they didn't have to say veterans or children or anything like that. So they can uh, deny it. Well, that's not what I voted for. Well, if they make the cuts in those areas, the only places they can take it from are Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans, and they want to add 4 trillion to the debt load. Um, were you surprised the way it went when it was 217 to 215?
No.
I was
Yeah.
kind of surprised because I thought it was going to be a little worrisome for Republicans to actually sign their name to it, until I realized they fucked with the wording a little bit so it didn't say Medicaid. Reasonable deniability for stupid people, people that didn't know any better. But they signed on to that name and onto that bill, and that bill says they're going to cut Medicaid. Indirectly, it says that, and veterans, and raise the debt limit and all this stuff. These people have to live with this for the rest of their life. And I'm surprised that they pigeonhole themselves that much, because this is going to stick with them forever, whether that bill passes or not.
They don't care. And you're assuming
They don't care, or they're
they don't
too
care.
terrified. But they're terrified of
Both.
Donald Trump too.
They don't
They
care.
weren't going
And,
to this wasn't going to pass at first. They
yeah.
pulled it off the floor.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden Donald Trump starts calling people, and this is, we've seen this before. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they say, okay, I'll vote for it, even though we don't like it. Donald
What
Trump
I'm
is
saying,
doing something, and they are terrified of this guy for some reason.
that's what I'm saying. He has the compromise on them. Whoever is getting those phone calls is dirty in some way. And when I say they don't care, what I mean is they don't care about getting reelected, because there's not going to be a free and fair election in 2 years. If anyone thinks there is, I have beachfront property to sell you in Arizona. Okay. If you think they're going to give up power, if you think we're going to have a free and fair election, if you think in 2 years they're going to let the Democrats win and take over the House, no, no. I
How
cannot
are they
stress
going to
that
do
to
that, though?
you enough. They already stole it. They have the software. They already stole it in November because they have the software. And now they have taken all of the federal agencies that do the cyber, make sure we don't get cyber hacked, and all of like the election interference agencies are gone. They control everything now. We don't live in a democracy at the present time. And I hate to be the one to say that, but I feel like I need to, because people need to understand we will not be able to vote our way out of this under the current climate. They are power grabbing everything. So the reason when I say they don't care, they're not concerned about getting reelected, because they will get reelected. They are worried about their secrets coming out, and they are scared of Donald Trump because he will hurt their family. Don't put that past him. But this is the main thing that we have to understand. They already stole one election. They will do it again.
Let me ask you this. I've debated with people about about the fair and regular election in 2026. People have said we won't have another one. And
Mhm.
and when you're looking at the Constitution and such, there's a lot to have to happen, and for it to not have an election, that would be, the election's going to occur. What you're saying is that they've got it gamed already. So
Yes.
if you're suggesting that what they're doing isn't going to work, but you think they've already gamed the 26 election, what's the way out of this then? I mean,
That's what I'm not
what's going to
sure
be done?
about. That's
Okay.
what I'm not sure about, because I know this isn't going to work, but I also know they have the software. Tina Peters stole the software. She is currently in prison. okay, in Colorado. If you want to Google on YouTube or put in Tina Peters sentencing and watch that judge light her up. She stole
Yeah.
the software and gave it to them. That is how they got the minions in there. Also, go to wired.com and subscribe to their newsletter. They have had newsletters explaining how they stole it. And I talked about Greg Palast before. It's mostly about dumping people off the voter logs, right? There were people on the Republican side who reported thousands of Black voters in Georgia and North Carolina and used Jim Crow laws to win those elections for Trump. And so the laws are so old that you can walk in and say, that family down there's moved. So anyone who voted theirs vote shouldn't count, and they dropped them off the voter roll. So they dropped the majority Black women and college students off the voter roll using these old Jim Crow laws. I saw Karl Rove on Fox News a couple years ago, around the 2020 election, saying they can always win if they can keep the election within 3% with disinformation, with their message. They can always win it because they can just dump the people they want off the roll. So it doesn't even have to be that they put the satellites up and do what Elmo did in November. They can do it in lots of different ways. The point that I want to make is that if anyone thinks they're going to give up power willingly and let Democrats get back in office, they're not. They're grabbing and seizing all power. They ultimately, and this is one of the things I wanted to also tell everybody, we need to use senators' power as leverage. Senators like to feel powerful. So if we call Susan Collins, we call Lisa Murkowski, we call Mitch McConnell, and we're saying, are you letting Elon and Trump usurp your power? Or are you ready to be powerless? Because if they get what they want, they're sending Congress home. There will be
Yeah.
no Congress. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why I say if we think we're having free and fair elections in 2 years, there might not even be a Congress in 2 years.
Now, let me ask you this, though. You were saying if they can keep it within 3%, they can win. And that's presuming Republicans vote Republican and Democrats vote Democrat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're seeing some backlash with Republicans, but if all Democrats vote against them and a shitload of Republicans vote against them, now we're looking at a bigger range than 3%. I mean, what's going on and the way they are doing things and how it's impacting people is certainly going to have a dramatic effect in the election. There are tons of people that are regretting their votes now. There are tons of people suffering under this draconian shit. Over and above whatever they can do to cheat, they are pushing a lot of people away. And an election could be a landslide if this continues.
If they didn't dump all the votes for Kamala, she won in a landslide in November. Less people betrayed us than we realize. There are much less red hats than there are sane Americans. That won't matter. We won't be able to vote our way out of it. This is a power grab. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to have to feel the burn of this in very horrible ways, people that are innocent and don't deserve this at all, before a large amount of Republicans wake up to the point that they've had enough. And I do believe part of how this crumbles is from the inside. A cult always crumbles from the inside because people will have the moment where they look at their leader and realize he's not who they thought that the leader was.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing that a little bit, but what you're suggesting too might even suggest to the point where people are so upset and so angry and so hurt that we'd almost be talking about a counter coup, which is involving violence. And wouldn't be surprised if we see violence. You fuck with people's lives, their kids, their futures, their careers, and end their lives essentially without killing them. People are going to get violent.
Yeah. And unfortunately, some people aren't going to wake up out of the MAGA cult slumber until it really hurts them or a family member. And I don't, I wish that violence and revolution didn't go hand in hand, but I do feel that there is some type of revolution that is, swelling. Kendrick Lamar said it at the Super Bowl, the revolution will be televised.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
we're
that was
watching
very,
it, and
very
we are
profound.
watching it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm one of these people we were talking beforehand. I never walk into a situation where I don't think I'm going to win or I don't think things will work out ultimately. And we see what times we're in here. And this is the Pollyanna side of me. We see the times we are in right now and how big a struggle and how terrifying it is for people. I can't help but think these, like you say, these things never last. They fail. Donald Trump always fails. Elon always fails. This will fail ultimately. I can't help but think that when this is done and the dust clears a little bit and we have to start cleaning up again, we come out on the other side and there's a lot of changes to the way we do government, the people we deal with, the expectations of those people. And I think somehow we come out of this better off than we were, even better off than we before we saw Donald Trump. Because I think a lot of the problems we're seeing now were always there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Donald Trump, this fucking rube, brought it to the surface. So now we can see all the ugliness. And I think when you can see all the ugliness, there's more motivation to clean that shit up.
Yeah.
I'm seeing better days down the road. The unfortunate things, we're going to have to get our ass kicked to get there.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we will come out of this a better society. I think that we will come out a more inclusive society. We will for sure have state of the art IT. The reason why it was so easy for the minions to get in there is because all that IT is like 80s uh,
Yeah.
technology. It was never upgraded. And that was the other thing that my friend educated me on, is that they've really neglected upgrading our systems, and they needed to be rebuilt anyway. Obviously, this is not the way you go about doing it because it hurts people. And but I do think we will get through this. Like I said, I don't think this will last forever. I don't know how it ends, but I also think people need to understand we don't have 2 years. An election, voting our way out of this is not going to be the way. It will take more than that. Now, we have special elections coming up in Florida, and I know they're putting a lot of time and effort into those. So if we could have some sort of, if we, and Elise Stefanik, I think her seat is still, there needs to be a special election there. So those are typically red districts, but they've got to try to see if we can win them, to see if we can balance it out in the House a little bit. That can help slow it down, right? This is going to be like fascism, death by a million paper cuts. Okay, we got to keep going because they're moving so fast with the fire hose of exhaustion and everything they're trying to do so quickly that it's going to be all these tiny little blows that takes them down, right?
I think
And
that's important. People look at the big problems we have today, and they do this in their life too. I've talked about this. People look at the whole problem, say this is insurmountable. I can't fix this all, and then they get depressed. We have to do what you're suggesting. We have to take one thing at a time, beat it, set it aside, and move on to the next thing. It's not as fast as we want. Everybody wants to fix everything quickly, but that's just not possible. If we get the small wins and keep taking them down, ultimately we'll take control of the situation.
yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. If we could hope to get one seed out of those three, if we could get two or three, obviously that's, the best case scenario, but chances are we won't. But we want to find our wins where we can. The town halls with all the Republican senior citizens, that was a win, except for they get on TV and lie and say it was all Democrats. And, the thing is that they're lying so much on TV. And even drunk lying. I saw a man the other day, I can't remember his name, saying something disparaging about AOC, and I swear he was drunk. He was slurring. He was like not even barely coherent, and he was talking badly about her. But they're going to get on TV and completely lie, right? So, but the fact of the matter is, on the ground, we know from social media that those were seniors and that they were from a red district and red voters in Georgia. That was one a clip that went around on social media a lot, was that town hall, because it popped off. They were angry.
There were several of
And
them, yeah.
so, yeah, there were several of them that really popped off, that the constituents were very upset. So like I said, we got to sort of find our wins along the way And it will eventually lead to the collapse of this regime. We don't have, like I said, planning for 2 years, planning and thinking that we can wait till the midterms, that's not going to work. We
No,
have
I
to,
agree.
yeah, well, right now we have to deal with what we have right now, making our phone calls. If you're able to protest, go out there and protest. If you're not, that's okay. You can make one phone call a week. Even if you are healing or recovering or have a chronic illness, you can make one phone call a week. So everybody just needs to do their part in combating this by living your best life, because they are living their worst life. So we want to live our best life. Do not succumb to their wanting us to feel bad or be upset. We're not doing that. Like you said, we're not going to be um, victims and abused by the narcissistic regime. We decided we're going to live our best life regardless and build community. And that's how we can start to build the revolution.
There's a guy by the name of James Carville. He's a Democratic pundit. He comes from the Bill Clinton days. And he said something, and I understand what he's saying. I disagree with him, but he says, all you really got to do now is play possum, do nothing, and this thing is going to come crashing down in 30 days. Now, I don't know if he's right or not, but the idea of standing back and doing nothing and let it burn down, I get that attitude. I've had that attitude in certain times going, okay, you want this? Take that fucker. But I think we have to be proactive and we have to be diligent about it. And here's a thought. These town hall meetings, there's not going to be many more town hall meetings put on by
No.
Republicans. They aren't
Mm-mm.
going to do that. And it's getting louder out there. People are going in front of capitals and protesting, and I'm happy to see that. What if the Democrats or some nonpartisan person set up these town hall meetings, invited the Democrat, invited the Republican, and the Republican wouldn't show, but have these town hall meetings where people can air their grievances and maybe talk about it. One of the other things, they always talk about, well, if we hit the streets, then they're going to call for martial law, which I'm not altogether certain. Didn't work in South Korea, probably won't work here. But what if we created protest online?
Mm-hmm.
With, and I mentioned this before, when Kamala was running, they got 20,000 people on a Zoom meeting. They collected a bunch of money and they talked about a lot of stuff. What if these protests online and not on social media because they're controlled by the wrong people? We could pull people together and keep the noise going. No one protest is going to win it over, but if that noise is constant and persistent, that's going to take its toll.
And the people like AOC, Jasmine, Bernie, Eric Swalwell, Chris Murphy, all the people who are out there being effective right now need to have town halls all the time.
Yeah.
And they should also be having TikTok town halls, social media town halls. They need to learn how to come into the modern era, okay? Because we don't have the pro democracy voices like we need, like all of those conservative voices. And so, yes, they all need to start being vocal. Sherry Jacobus, I don't know if you know who she is. She actually was a Republican strategist for many years and became an ever Trumper and then registered as a Democrat. And she suggested having, which I thought was a great idea, and it got a lot of traction, but then it sort of fizzled out. But things get on traction on social media and then they can just die. But she suggested that we have a spokesperson and that they do daily press briefings, and that someone like Pete Buttigieg would be a good person to do that and start counteracting their disinformation. And I think that's a great idea. If they don't want it to be one person, then have a rotating. And if they don't want it to specifically be, a news conference, then Pete and a revolving door of Democrats need to be on TV every night. I have found it very disappointing that Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, the Bushes, the Obamas are silent. I honestly, it's really inexcusable to me.
Yeah, I
Barack could
agree.
easily get on an interview and say, like, what's happening? No, and get tons of publicity and tons of airtime. I don't understand why they're not doing anything. It really bothers me, but we're on our own. That's what we're learning. We have a handful of people in Congress we can count on, and they've got to get loud, and we have to encourage them to do so.
What we could do, I mean, I'll offer it out there. It'll never happen because I'm nobody, but I do the lives now and again. And what I try to do with the lives, because I have a background in radio, I kind of, it's akin to a call-in talk show. I have a couple people on the panel, maybe 3 or 4 people on the panel, and then I take as many calls as I can, or people coming in to ask questions. Because I'll be honest with you, people who listen to those lives on TikToks, there's some fucking brilliant people, absolutely brilliant, and I appreciate them commenting. But what I would love to do more than anything is take one politician, do a live with that politician, and then let people ask questions. I'd be there to take the questions and say, here you go. And I think they would get a lot of traction out of it. They might be better off with somebody who's a bigger creator, but whether they're willing to do it or not. But, you know, say it's me and AOC, and then everybody's going to rush in there, and we'll take as many questions as possible, and it will create kind of a stir. And if not me, AOC could do it herself, or Jasmine Crockett. They need to be out there talking all the time. I mean, it's not even about being reelected. It's about saving the country. And you're absolutely right. As far as them being on TV, I'm not so concerned about that, because TV's going to shit, as we saw with MSNBC firing all the people of color from their channel. They're doing this because they want to change the tone, but they're also losing a shitload of money too. They can't afford these people. I'm pleased by seeing the Jim Acostas and the Don Lemons showing up on YouTube and doing the sort of things. What would actually be a brilliant idea is if, like, Joy Reid and Don Lemon and Jim Acosta did what was the equivalent of a show on YouTube every day.
Yeah.
You might have Acosta 1 hour, Lemon the other hour, Joy Reid the next hour, and whoever else after that. You could get control, and you could pull a big enough audience on YouTube to make a difference and be able to say whatever the fuck you want to say. They need to utilize social media, because that's where the action is now. That's where people are getting the most attention.
Absolutely. I popped onto an AOC Instagram live, and there were like 300,000 people on her live.
Wow. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
They could pull huge crowds. They could do it every day, a different person every day, and just keep that momentum rolling.
Yeah. And that was actually what I suggested to Eric Swalwell that got me a follow.
Wow.
Because everybody in the comments was just screaming, do something, do something. And I actually laid out what to do. And one of them was, you have to get in front of people every day. Not just every once in a while, not once a month, daily. And like I said, I think AOC and Jasmine are doing a good job of that. I do have to say, though, Jasmine was on The View, and The View is a very good place to go to reach women.
Right.
Because women still care about The View and watch The View. So I like it that Jasmine has gone mainstream and that she is getting those interviews. But I agree, they have got to be better at that. Mark Cuban actually suggested to Chris Murphy, who has been a very vocal senator from Connecticut. I wish he would take Chuck Schumer's job, but
I do too.
Suggested to him that he stop posting on Twitter and that he start posting on Blue Sky more, because he's only getting bots and not reaching anyone on Twitter, and he needs to move all that content to Blue Sky. So Chris Murphy's team of social media needs to get with it. He's still on Twitter and doing all of that when he's getting no reach and only getting bots and trolls and backlash. And he needs to start posting on social media sites where he can actually get traction and people want to hear what he has to say. So I was glad when I saw that from Mark Cuban telling him, let X go, come over to Blue Sky. So Mark Cuban gets it.
Now, why are people still on X? I don't get that.
I mean, I pop over there every once in a while, and every time I go over there, it really lets me know that they flooded the zone with bots and trolls, because they're all gone. And you would think it would be a big party of MAGA over there, and it's not. It's not. Now, it's very skewed, and the algorithm is all messed up. You're not going to get like engagement if you're trying to like meet and connect people with the way you used to be able to do there. But it is I think we didn't fully grasp the bot and troll campaign that was pro Trump and pushing all those narratives leading up to the election. I don't think we understood the millions and millions of them that there were, because they were trolling politicians so badly before the election, just thousands of comments under their posts. There's nothing now. Nothing. Like all of them just moved on to whatever election they're trying to ruin next. So very little of what we saw in support for them was actually real online. And so that's why the politicians have got to hire media savvy and social media savvy advisors to help them use the platforms for the best reach. And like I said, AOC seems to get it, but most of them just don't get it. Even Hakeem, when he gave a speech the other day, complained about the number of people calling in, and I wanted to scream. I just thought he doesn't get it at all. He's still in the old school. Someone like Jasmine or AOC needs to have that job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Hakeem's been a disappointment. You brought up Eric Swalwell, and I've always liked Eric Swalwell because he seems reasonably minded, but he isn't opposed to getting angry and saying, fuck off, that kind of thing. He's like a real person. And I watch him on TikTok now and again, and he's good. He says what he's going to say, and it's a little bit measured. But I'm looking at you talk about AOC getting 300,000 in the live on Instagram. Okay. If you look on TikTok, she has 2.79 million followers. She has a lot of followers. On TikTok, Eric Swalwell has 236,000 followers, which makes no sense. He should have over 1 million followers. That's why I'm saying it would be fun to take somebody who hasn't utilized TikTok as much as they can for at least as long as we can, whatever happens, when they shut it down or don't shut it down. It would make sense for Swalwell to get on a live with AOC, or even me, even somebody like me or Hawk or somebody like that, because it would expose everybody to who follows Swallow already, but all these other people. And if we can build a bigger audience for him, a bigger platform, he's the right guy. He's young. And I'm sorry to say this. And I don't mean this in any other way other than what happened on November 5th. He's young, he's white, and he's a male. And that apparently matters in this country. So he might be a likely prospect for this if he's built going forward. And that's one of the things the Democrats need to do. They need to find candidates and start building those candidates now.
Absolutely. And he is definitely in contention for presidential material in the future, 100%. He is really good in committee meetings. On committee, he really goes after Marjorie Taylor Greene as well, and he's really good at coming after her. And I think that is a good example of he needs better social media aids. He needs more help.
Well, since you're basically cousins with him now,
I can suggest it.
You can say, hey, why don't you do a live with Mike? He's nobody, but he's got some followers. And let's get you more numbers on this thing. There's no reason he should have 236,000 followers when AOC has 2.7 million. He's a strong voice in the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, in a country that's clearly racist and sexist, we've got to take advantage of those people who would vote against Jasmine Crockett or an AOC because they have the audacity of being a woman or a woman of color. It sounds like I'm buying into the whole racism thing, but at this point, I don't really care about that as much as winning. We got to win.
Exactly. And someone competent. That's the most important thing right now. We got to have someone competent who can actually win. And he falls into that category. Well, because I'm one of the people that yes, and it's not just him. Because I'm one of the people that he follows, he sees all my posts, right? Because he doesn't have a feed that's constantly going with people who are posting all the time. So I, in some ways, feel like he has helped me elevate my game. Because I'm not going to just write something just off the cuff. I actually really try to think about what I want to say, and I want to try to elevate my content because of that. So I thank him for following me because I feel like it made me a better content creator, and it makes me more just cognizant of what I'm saying and understanding that my words can have power. And what I realized, he had a TikTok that went viral last week. When he goes viral, guess what's going to happen to Kristen's Blue Sky account?
Wow.
It goes viral because people go to his account and see he's following 6 people. Who's this girl?
Yeah.
Who's this girl? She's not famous. Everybody else is. So I had an influx when and I'm not on TikTok, so I didn't realize what had happened until I started seeing people on Blue Sky reposting it. So he had a TikTok. I think he was in his car and he sort of mouthed off, but it was good. We want more of this, Eric. We like this energy, Eric, please.
He does a good
And
job.
yeah, so I had like so many new followers the next morning. And then when I saw he had that tweet or that TikTok go viral, I realized, oh, people went to his Blue Sky because of that and saw he was following me. And I just got the automatic follow, like, who's this girl? So we can have a voice, right? I'm just a girl. I got his attention. And
Right.
our voices can matter. And that's one of the main things I want to say and make that point here today is that we are not nobodies. Our voices do matter. We're already making a difference. And I don't want to scare anybody with things that I feel about what could happen, but I also think knowledge is power. And if we can understand that these people are willing to burn it all down in order to not have equality, then we can understand where they're coming from and match them at that energy, right?
Well,
We're not going to back down from our morals, right? We're going to hold our morals of equality and a country that works for everybody.
well, and those people out there, there's a lot of people out there on social media or not on social media. They will say, I'm just nobody. I'm sitting here. My voice doesn't matter. We're finding out now that and people will yell at me for saying this, but you said it, so I'm going to repeat it. This girl in California's got a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say girl, it's not,
Woman, yes.
it's a term of endearment. It's not
Yeah,
diminishing you.
I'm not offended.
Uh, but at the same time, here's an old guy with an attitude looking like this, sitting in his living room, talking shit. And I get a lot of followers. If you're consistent and you're authentic and you keep doing it, people will gravitate towards you if they agree with you. And I feel vindicated, not in whatever I do, that as many people follow me as they do, because it tells me there's a lot of people of a similar mind. And when there's that many people of a similar mind, we got a shot here.
Yeah. There are more of us than there are of them. They want us to think and believe that there are more of them than there are of us. There are more sane Americans than there are non-sane. There's more sane
Absolutely.
Americans than there are cult members. It's just that they are more awful than we are in loud and awful and proud of being awful, and so that gets a lot of attention, so it can seem like they have much more support than they do. And the other thing that is sad but true is they are literally trying to kill off their constituents. Okay, by cutting Medicaid, who are they actually hurting the most? A disproportionate number of boomers are Republicans.
Right.
Older people tend to be more conservative. So they are directly telling their constituents by their votes, by their lying, by their behavior, we don't care about you.
Well, and the thing is,
And
when you get to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, I feel like that's a red line. There are people who subsist strictly on Social Security and Medicare. That's all they
mm-hmm,
got. And you
mm-hmm,
take that away from them. I was on a live recently and I found it very upsetting. This woman came on and we were talking about Social Security. And she said, I live in the middle of nowhere, whatever red state. I have to have my Social Security to pay my rent so I have a place to live. If they take that away, I'll be homeless. And to think of an elderly woman, and I don't know how elderly, maybe she's a bit older than I am, to have to worry about that at the stage of your life, at the stage of this life, is
mm-hmm,
fucking appalling. And then when you have
mm-hmm.
Republicans, whether they be in the House, the Senate, or just walking down the street, not giving a shit, this angers me and it puts me in a different mindset. It's more of attack mode than kind of a sparring with these people. So when I run into Trumplefucks at this stage, after all we've seen, I don't want to argue with them. I want to tear their head off.
I understand. I want to literally scream sometimes at their ignorance, but the thing is, when they want to come over to our side, we have to accept them. I have done that work, and believe me, it's hard. But when they've had the epiphany and they're ready to come out of the cult, we have to welcome them. It's okay that they betrayed us. We have to push that aside when they've had the epiphany. There are going to be those that never do, and they will stay in that cult and they will die on that hill. There's nothing we can do about those people. But we need as many people as we can to awaken that they don't like this. This is not what they want. This is not American values. One of the things I want to make really clear is that we have to judge a society by how we treat the most vulnerable people. Who are we as a society when we don't take care of babies and seniors and people who are special needs or disabled? These are the most valuable and most vulnerable people in our society. And we absolutely should judge a society on how they take care of babies and elderly people. If they cut Medicaid the way they want to, it will also affect neo-NIC units. So if you have a baby that is premature, or if you have a baby that needs surgery, or for some reason needs to be in that NICU, the bills are astronomical. If you have a baby that needs to be on a respirator in an incubator, you will need Medicaid or Medi-Cal to help you pay for that, because you have to be so wealthy to afford this. Even if you are upper middle class, those hospital bills from that baby being in NICU can wipe you out. And I think the percentage I saw today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 40% of what they wanted to cut in the Medicaid budget would be affecting babies.
Yeah, I heard that too. That's right, 40%, which is frightening. Now, I will say this. I can say this about just about every guest that I have on this show. You're better than I am. Because the idea, what you said, I understand the premise and the reasoning about saying we've got to accept them in. I understand that because we need the numbers and we need to be forgiving and all that stuff. But here's my problem with that. Even if we do accept them in, I can't trust them. I can't trust them for being smart enough to do the right thing. I can't trust them to not stab us in the back. Um, I don't know if I'm going to have an easy time being accepting of some of the Trumplefucks I've dealt with, even ones in my family. I've likened it to this. I said, if you have a group of people or a family or whatever, and one of those people get arrested for abusing a child, and they go away to jail, they do their time, and then when they come up, you're going to let them back in the family? You're going to trust them to do the right thing now that they've done their time? I sure the fuck am not. It's one thing to have a different political opinion, but when you've purposely went out and tried to destroy democracy, destroy this country, and hurt the future for my children and grandchildren, that's a hard one to come back from.
And all the points you just made are totally valid. And I agree with you, but I also feel like shunning them won't work either. The ones what you're talking about they're not going to come out of the cult. They're going to die on that hill. The ones you're talking about, they're not going to have the epiphany. They're not going to have the awakening. There are many that just fall into the category of misinformed or underinformed. They're not in the category of racist, misogynist, bigotry. They're not in that category. They're in what I have found, because I did this work before the election with these healing circles. If people aren't familiar, I talked about it in my first appearance on the podcast. What I found out was they were underinformed or misinformed. And especially with the women, they were raised in Republican families like I was, and they just voted R down the line. They just they were not informed. And the only thing exposed to them is Fox News. In my whole family, the only thing on TV is Fox News. Okay? So when you are completely indoctrinated into that, it's a very big deal to wake up to that and come out of that. And I want to say, if someone has woken up out of the cult that their family has kept them in their whole life, I want to say to them, good job. I'm so proud of you for awakening. Let's get you healed.
I will say this: if somebody does come back into the fold and say, whoops, I made a mistake, there's two things they're going to have to do. They're going to have to acknowledge they're wrong, because Trump-fucks have a tough time doing it. They have
Very,
to
yes.
acknowledge I was wrong. I want to do the right thing. And then they're going to have to prove it to me, because I don't
Hmm.
trust the motherfuckers. They lie
Yeah.
constantly. You watch that cabinet meeting with Donald Trump, and when he was speaking, everything he said was a lie. And somebody listening to that bought that lie. It's one thing if you're a liar, but if you're willing to believe lies, then you're just perpetuating it. We're talking with
Yeah.
severely damaged people that follow
Yeah.
Donald Trump to this day after
Yeah.
seeing all you've seen. If you still follow him, this is a deeply damaged person.
Well, that's what I was saying, morally bankrupt. They're morally corrupt, right? Because they actually want brown people to be hurt. Okay. They want the concentration camps. Okay. They want those people to get hurt. There was, I think they're called the Good Liars, and they go to all the Trump stuff and they are like comedians and they interview these people. It's unreal. There was a guy at CPAC. CPAC is literally the convention for horrible people, is what I discovered.
Yeah.
And in the work I do, like everybody there has a closed heart chakra. Like nobody is empathetic. Like I looked at like the sea of people there and I was like, wow, that's all unhealed people. Okay. But they found one guy wearing an ice jacket. They asked him if he was in, if he actually worked for ICE. No, he bought it on Amazon,
Yeah.
but he likes to wear it to scare people. That's what he said. And of course, he's a January 6ther who was pardoned. He was one of the ones that was smoking joints in some senator's office. I forget which senator, but that's what he had a wig on. I remember when they showed him from January 6th, I remembered him. I was like, oh, I remember that douchebag. So
Yeah.
we're talking about deplorable, deplorable people. That was the perfect word when Hillary Clinton used it. Those people are not going to have the epiphany, Mike. You're not going to have to worry about that. They won't. The people that are having the epiphany are on the outskirts of that. Okay. That core group of the real hardcore racist people that will burn it all down so that a Black woman doesn't have a chance in this world, they are not going to change. They will die on that hill. But there are the people in the periphery. And there are people, we're in this world. I grew up in DC, right? Right outside of DC. So I grew up in a political landscape, right? There are people that are totally not political. They have no idea what we're talking about. They can't tell you who their congressperson is. They don't know who the senators are. Those people fall into the underinformed category. They are reachable. That's what I found out during the healing
Yeah.
circles. We can reach them on common American values. We all could agree on that. And one thing that was amazing about the healing circles I did is we never got infiltrated. We had not one infiltrator. Okay. Which means we never had a lady who pretended and came in and then, exploited things. No, we were really good at finding the ones who would have the true epiphany, the true awakening of, I was lied to. I do feel bad. And a lot of them did apologize. They did, and they had apologized to their female family members for, and it was we had a lot of grandma types who had voted for him previously, who were ashamed of themselves because of their daughters and what they had set up for a future for their granddaughters.
I would have to believe anybody of a normal mind, once they realize this, they have to be ashamed, because it goes back to what I said before. For me, being a white man, a lot of this stuff isn't impacting me directly, but I do think about my kids and my grandkids. And anybody who's of my age who has kids and grandkids, if you're not worried about them, you're fucking oblivious. And if it takes this to wake them up, if it takes them getting pinched in the ass to believe that, I guess we have to accept that. But the trouble is these people aren't realizing it until they feel the pain. And that's why sometimes some people think that what's going on now almost has to happen in order to fix this whole thing.
And the thing is that very few of them in that world go to therapy or do any type of self help, any type of self reflection. I know because I grew up with them.
Yeah.
I grew up in a religious family, and they want to hurt other people in the same religion. I had a family member say to me when the big talking point on Fox News was they're poisoning the blood of our country. Remember what right before the election, that was like the big talking point. They're poisoning the blood of our nation. Well, I was raised Catholic. The people who are coming into this country that they call illegal and disparage are Catholics. And I
Yeah.
said to this family member, you are wanting bad things to happen. People who are Catholic, is this what Jesus would want? Yes. Yes. They think hurting people is somehow divine. Mike Johnson told the press that God wants him to pass this bill. He thinks that his God wants him to take money away from poor people to give to rich people so that elderly people are sick and don't have health care and a place to live.
The evangelical and far right Christians aren't Christian at all. It's fake.
No,
It's bullshit. It's
total. And I'm
hypocrisy.
going to put Catholics in that category. And the thing about
Yeah.
that really irks me about Catholics is if you meet an evangelical and ask them if Catholics are saved, they will tell you no. Okay.
No. Well,
So in the evangelical world, Catholics are not part of you. They're not part of the saved community.
but the Catholics will do the same thing.
Yes, exactly.
Will the Lutherans or the evangelicals or the Mormons be saved? No. It's how
No.
it is in religion. Ours is the only way. Anybody who
Mm-hmm.
thinks differently than us is going to hell. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
problem with religion.
Yeah.
It's human beings who created these clubs to maintain power and to grift money, and they hide behind Christianity and God. And that pisses
Yeah.
me off
Yeah.
because when they go to their maker, they're going to fuck around and find out because
Yeah.
they are completely wrong. It's all about self-enrichment, and it gets tiring to listen to. I consider myself a Christian in the sense that I believe in a God
Mm-hmm.
and I believe in treating people well. But when I see these people, I take it as a personal insult that you're
Mm-hmm.
perverting whatever you believe to fit your narrative and fit what you need to gain or you believe you need to gain, the same way that they're perverting the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
They want to act like they're sticking to the letter of the law, but they pervert the letters of the law or the letters of the Bible. It's fucking frustrating.
You have a guest that comes on, I think Ed is his name, and he is really smart, really smart.
He is a smart guy.
And yeah, he's really brilliant. And one time he said, and I couldn't agree with him more, for these folks, the Civil War never ended.
Right.
It never ended. They still think they're superior in their Christian Bible thumping world. They are more susceptible to becoming a cult member because they're already in a cult.
Yeah.
And the religion is the cult. That's the first cult they've gotten indoctrinated into. And I was raised Catholic. I went to church every Sunday, and I consider myself Catholic. But I also can see through the smokescreen of the Catholic Church, and I always did. It never fooled me, even as a little girl. So the fact when we combine these things together, right, which what Ed was saying was basically that KKK and all of that Southern mentality was never dealt with. We didn't send all those generals to prison. We didn't charge them with treason. We let them have monuments in their name. We didn't outlaw their flag. We didn't deal with it. And so it festered and it kept going. And it's not a coincidence that these are the same people, right? That
Right.
were slave owners and uber religious and that now think and worship a false god in Donald Trump. It's all goes hand in hand. And I've referenced this many times. There is a YouTube video you can watch that is a panel of psychologists and sociologists who are all leading experts in cults, and they explain the phenomenon of MAGA and how it is not a coincidence at all that people who are already very religious fall into the MAGA cult very easily.
Yeah. These are weak-minded people who need
Yeah.
to be led. There are very few leaders in evangelical Christianity or in politics. They're all looking for a leader, and whoever speaks the loudest or speaks what they're just constantly looking for ways to substantiate and validate what they believe.
Yeah.
They don't like
Yeah.
brown people. So when somebody says those brown people are dangerous, I'm going to follow that guy because he talks just like me. That's what it
Yeah.
is. And it's a sad
Yeah.
state that there are so many followers in this world and not enough fucking leaders. But when we're talking about evangelicals and we're talking about Republicans, a lot of followers in this world. You know, it's funny. I'll get a Trump fuck I talk to every so often, and I'm always taken by. You say they think of themselves as superior, but when I sit and talk to them, my immediate reaction is, Jesus, you are so fucking stupid. I mean, it's ignorance. And then I'll say the things I say to them, and they'll always come at me saying, oh, I can't believe you're calling names. You're not better than that. Well, then you haven't listened to me because I'm not better than that. And I'm fucking proud of it. I'll call
Yeah.
you a dumbass if you're a dumbass. I may not be the most appropriate when it comes to that, but I am fucking accurate. If you're stupid, you're stupid. And they immediately go to the victim game and they want to cry and pout about this in spite of the fact that this is what they've done for 8 years.
Yeah. I'm not willing to entertain any of them really, because they are not operating in good faith. And so if they're still in the cult, to me, I don't waste my time with them. If they come into my social media, I immediately block them. I won't engage with them in any way because if they're still in the cult, there's no talking to them.
No, I
And
agree.
I made this comment before, but we've gotten to this place because we have a very poor educational system. We really have. The fact that Fox
Oh,
News was able to program 70 million people is because our critical thinking skills are very low. And but then I go, well, there are even smart people that are Trumpers, but they're racist. And like I said, there's going to be something underlying there that is not right, and they were either raised in a racist family, or or were raised in such an environment that it was programmed very young. It was programmed young. Misogyny, racism, bigotry, all of that is learned. It's taught.
right. I hear people say that too. Some smart people back Donald Trump. Uh, no matter where you are, whether you're in school, whether you're with your friends, or whether you're in business, people perceive the fact that if he's a boss, he must be smart. Or if he's
Correct. Yes.
successful in life, he
Hmm.
must be smart. That's
Yeah.
not fucking true. I know plenty
Yeah.
of people that are successful that are not smart human beings. And it's
Hmm.
because they're maybe smart in one area. They're smart in how to make a buck, but they
Hmm.
have no humanity. They have no
Hmm.
decency. And if you
Hmm.
have that, you're not a smart person. You're not paying attention to what's going on. Um, Maybe it's only a part of them that's stupid, but make no mistake, they're fucking stupid, regardless of what position they hold or how smart
I
they claim to
agree.
be.
I agree with that for the most part, except for I have family members who are very brilliant, but they're also racist. And yes, they
How
can
are
be
they
book
brilliant?
smart.
I'm not trying to argue with you, but how do you perceive them as brilliant? What's brilliant about them?
Um, they're good at math. They're good at science. They've been good at building wealth. They have, like you said, a prestigious job or have worked their way up in some sort of industry. But they were raised to be a Republican, and they never did any self exploration of their own heart, of their own self, of their own consciousness. JD Vance for me is a good example of this. JD
Yeah.
Vance went to Harvard. He is not a dumb guy. He is not. But he was severely traumatized as a child and never got therapy. So he is in his toxic masculinity. Is as toxic as it comes, is as toxic as it gets, because he never did the work on himself. And he could be a psychopath. We don't know. We can't make that assessment. But he is not a dumb guy. But he has very much a broken part of himself because he never did the work on himself to overcome his childhood.
Let me put it this way. Somebody like JD Vance is screaming about masculinity. And I'm a male, so maybe I'm not a good judgment. You're a female. Does he strike you as an alpha male? Does he strike you as somebody
No, he's
who's
a beta
ultra
male. Any
masculine?
any
Yeah,
of the
he
ones who
is.
were talking about masculinity are beta males. Men who are
Right.
actually alpha males don't talk about masculinity. They don't need to. Josh
Right.
Hawley's another one. He talks all about masculinity because he's a beta male. He ran out of the Capitol like a little you know what on January 6th.
Like a
The
little
biggest
bitch.
coward
Yeah,
we've ever
he did.
seen. Yes.
Yeah, he did.
So
You're absolutely right. The guys who are tough don't tell you how tough they are. I've known them all my life, and I'm the toughest guy. And then they get knocked on their ass, and then they go back to where they belong, being the beta male. If you have to talk about it, it's probably not true. But the thing about it is when you're talking about intelligence, I understand what you're saying. They're successful, they're smart in math, smart in science, but somewhere in their life they've been damaged emotionally. And while they can do math, they are not a well-rounded person. They are a damaged person. Because if you're smart, you should be able to look at any situation and realize what's true, what's a lie, or what's right or what's wrong. And clearly they have a blind spot when it comes to that. And they may be smart in some areas, specific areas, but they're not a well-rounded person. They're not a complete
no,
human being.
no, they have low emotional intelligence, right? A low emotional IQ. And I would put JD Vance in that category. And I would also put the members of my family who I'm saying are smart, but also did vote for Trump. Their emotional IQ is zero. Okay.
Right. And I think a lot of these people too, I see this all the time with people, especially the ones that are loud and obnoxious. Um, this is a sign of deep, deep insecurity. They're
Mhm.
insecure in themselves. They're trying to mask that. And that may go back to what you said before about some horrible trauma in their youth. A lot of kids go through trauma. And I feel bad for those kids that go through trauma. But if you grow up to be a fucking monster, my sympathy stops there.
I had trauma in my childhood and I had to take responsibility for it in my adulthood. It's not anybody else's job to heal me or my trauma. It's up to me. And as an adult, if you have been through something and you are traumatized, it's up to you to get help. Sometimes you can't do it on your own. Sometimes you are
Right.
so traumatized, you will need trauma therapy, you will need help. And I work with people who are traumatized every day. Majority of the people who make an appointment with me have been traumatized in some way and are looking for different ways of healing themselves. That gives you emotional intelligence. Knowing that you need help and going to get it is a sign of strength. The people that are in charge at MAGA have personality disorders. These are
Right.
people who are severely damaged. Narcissists have the lowest self esteem of anyone. They are completely insecure, right? Um, or you can have the megalomaniacs that have these huge egos, right? What Leon's got, which mask that little boy in insecurity, right?
Right.
So it toxic masculinity is a big problem in this country. It's a big problem. We watch toxic masculinity on display every day. I said on Blue Sky the other day, a closed heart chakra is out and an open heart chakra is in. You have an open heart chakra. And what prompted me to say that was I just seen a clip from CPAC of the most unsympathetic, most unempathetic, closed hearted, evil people reveling in it, proud of each other that I'm going to be a bigger deplorable than you. And when, as a society, that's what's in charge, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble.
And you have to understand why they do that. I talked to my son about this. He's like every young guy who's like me. You get mad, you lose your shit, you yell and scream, you stomp around. In their minds, they think this is, or if you're just, not sympathetic at all, in their minds, they think this shows strength. And I had to sit my son down and say, you think because you're yelling and screaming that shows strength, or maybe you're trying to intimidate somebody into doing your bidding, but in fact what you're doing is showing you're weak. He goes, how's that possible? It's showing me that you're so weak, you cannot control your mind, you cannot control your emotions, you just let it fly, and then after the fact you have to clean it up. If you were smart and in control of the shit, you just deal with it properly and you wouldn't have the mess to clean up later. And I think he got it. I don't know if
Mhm.
he's totally grasped it because he's still young. But this is what people, when you're in your 20s or early 30s, that's going to happen. That's a time when you figure things out. But there are people in their 40s, 50s, 60s in politics, in entertainment that still haven't fucking figured that out.
Well, there's going to be a lot of people who've ruined their careers via this, right? These people think their career is made now. I'm never going to listen to Jewel again. I love Jewel, right? All of the people
Me too. Me
that
too.
supported him, anyone who hitched their wagon to this is done. If you're a celebrity and you hitched your wagon to this, I'm done with you, even if I was a fan before. Um, I used to be like that, like much more reactive than I am now. And because I have worked on myself, I don't do that. I don't make messes like I used to make and have to clean
Right.
them up. I've learned. And Donald Trump never learned that,
No,
ever.
he's never had to because he
He's never
always
had
had the
to.
bully position.
Yep. Yep. And I think like what we're just seeing on display right now, I just cannot stress this to, enough to everybody is do the work on yourself so you don't end up like this. Right?
Right.
I guess we have to really say these people are being their worst self, which means I'm going to be my best self. We have to counterbalance this negative energy that they're sending out into our collective with us living our best life. And
With
and with us claiming that we are allowed to do that, even in this time of turmoil, we're going to give ourselves permission to do that.
absolutely. Donald Trump is you can see how evident it is with Donald Trump where he's not used to pushback. He was sitting with President Macron from France, and he made a statement, and Macron corrected him. And you could see in his face, he was angry, he was upset, he was fucking scared because he didn't know what to do in that situation. He didn't have the control to intimidate this other political leader. And I don't know if you noticed, he went over and put his hand on Macron's leg, and then
Yeah.
Macron grabbed his hand and pushed it over. And he kept trying to push it back, and he pushed it over. Macron put him in his place, and you could see it in his face. And then you have people asking him questions and pushing him in the White House press room. And he gets flustered during that. So flustered, in fact, now they're deciding to pick and choose who's going to be in that press room and kick out everybody else, which is interesting. But I think it's an opportunity that I don't know that anybody will take. But Donald Trump is a terrified child at this point. And if people would have pushed back on him in 2015, that motherfucker would have never been president. And that's why I hold the media responsible. They didn't do their job.
And they didn't understand how to deal with the narcissist. Macron knew how to deal with a narcissist. And when he corrected him, he put his hand on his shoulder, like when Dumpy was lying through his teeth about how I think it was about Ukraine he was lying about, saying
Yeah.
that they had given Ukraine all this money, and Macron was like, "No, it's a loan. It's a loan, and they're going to pay us back, and we have the details worked out." And it was a power play between the two of them,
Yeah.
and I felt like even speaking his second language, right? English isn't even his first language. Macron so eloquently told the truth about how Ukraine is being funded in Europe that Dumpy didn't even know what to say. He's just sat, his whole face was just all the
Yeah.
life force fell out of his face. They had been having a couple of back and forths because they had like a handshake that sort of they tried to wrestle with each other with the handshake too. And then MSNBC called Macron the leader of the free world after that. They
Wow.
said, they said, I can't remember the name of the woman who said it, but she said something like, well, we're used to the president being the leader of the free world. But in that moment, it was definitely Macron. I was like, oh, he's going to hate this. He's going to freak out when he hears that. Yeah.
He is. We're coming to the end here. We're going to wrap it up here in a minute. But in terms of him kicking people out of the press room that he doesn't like, the APs and anybody that doesn't comply with his fucked up rules or asked him tough questions, they don't want him in the room. He wants Breitbart and Fox and that shit. I want to see what you think about this based on what you know about narcissists, how this should be handled. The legitimate media, as far as I'm concerned, if they're going to do this, they're going to play this game. I would say legitimate media, all of them, pull out,
Mm-hmm.
don't go. don't go, because he thrives on attention and being the center of attention. And if all the legitimate media pulls out of there, he's going to freak the fuck out. It's going to call him on his bullshit. Now, people will say, well, we got to know what the president's doing. Do we? Because he's not pulling the string. Elon is. We can cover Elon. We can cover Congress. We can see the mess that is being created by these people. It's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the woods, does the tree even exist? If no one hears from Donald Trump ceases to exist. And I think that may be a ploy that we can do, is just take him out of the equation as much as we can, because he's out there stirring shit up all the time. If we can minimize that, minimize him, and focus on the problems as opposed to Don's little fucking circus, I think we'd go a little farther in taking that motherfucker down.
I totally agree. Taking his oxygen away and taking their
Right.
own the libs, you take that away from them, and you have stripped them of so much power. But it will need to be ABC, Associated Press, NBC. They all need to stick together. So I know they kicked out CBS, or they've kicked out a couple off and on. I think they kicked out AP. They all need to stick together. That if one of them gets kicked out, they all need to leave.
That
So
should be
if
the
they
standard fare.
Yes,
Yeah.
it should be all for one and one for all. Let Breitbart and Ohan, let them stay. That's fine, because we take so much oxygen away from them because they simply want to own the libs, and that's part of why they want to kick out and why they want to do all of that, right? And I think Elon even said something on Twitter about that CBS people need to go to jail, or I mean, he was literally threatening like journalists with jail on X. It was absurd. I agree with you. It will work and be most effective if all that press pool sticks together.
Problem is, the people that own these organizations are part of the enemy too. So,
Yeah, they've all
you know,
acquiesced. They've all bowed to the king, which is disgusting. Yeah,
and it's dangerous too, because
yeah,
they started out bowing to him because he was good TV. He was like reality TV, and he was going to put on a shit show, and they decided to make money over the betterment of the country. And then they got caught up in it, and he's still good TV. So they continue to do whatever it is to make money, and the fucking country be damned.
yeah. And a lot of those CEOs are his friends, because all of those rich guys are all friends. And
Yeah.
remember, he was on NBC. He had a TV show. He knows all those big network people. I mean, I think one thing that we didn't realize that was happening leading up to the election is they were all in cahoots with him. They were
Yeah.
all in cahoots. They called the election early for him. It was all planned. It was all orchestrated. And the new woman that just took over at MSNBC, clearly she's a plant, because she went in there and did exactly his bidding and fired all of the minorities.
Right.
And so clearly that was part of it, to get her in there to do his bidding. And then Jeff Bezos, I believe, just released something saying they're not going to say anything against him, and they're basically just going to agree with him from now on, and they're not going to have oppositional op-eds in the Washington Post anymore.
And the editor
So,
quit. The
mhm,
editor said, fuck this shit.
yeah,
Yeah. The interesting thing will be when the ultimate crash comes for Donald Trump. People say, well, we've been waiting for the crash. It's coming. It always comes for people like Donald Trump. It's taken longer than I expected, but he will crash.
yeah.
Watch all these motherfuckers jump ship and start saying, yeah, we never liked him.
They're
That's
all
what's
going
going
to
to be
do that.
interesting.
And they're going to let them go on a rehab tour, and it's going to be infuriating, because they're going to let some of them rehab themselves and distance themselves from it, when the people that went to work from him will need to be held accountable. It's up to us. We have to have new media be on the rise. One, even though I'm not a big fan of Midas Touch, at least they have overtaken Joe Rogan's ratings. So that's a
I
plus.
give him
I'm not
credit for
fans
that.
of them, but at least they did that, and at least they're not spewing total misinformation.
My thing with Midas Touch isn't what they say. It's just how they deliver it. And it's not that they do anything bad. It's just not my personal
Yeah,
favorite.
I don't like them either, but I'm just happy that at least they're getting some traction, and they're not in the right wing pocket.
They're saying the right things. I don't know. I'm not going to say anything bad about Midas Touch. It's just my personal preference and what I like to watch.
Hmm.
What they say and how they do it is perfectly fine. And if it's something you like, and obviously a lot of people do, God bless you. Keep watching them. Don't watch MSNBC.
That's what I'm saying. At least they're not spreading misinformation or gaslighting people. I don't like them personally. I don't resonate with any of their commentators, so nothing makes me want to tune in because I'm not like, oh, I like that person. I want to hear what they have to say. But I'm glad that Joe Rogan has lost that top slot. That is one of, when I say it's death by a million paper cuts, that's how we're going to take down fascism. That's how we're going to get our country out of authoritarianism. Is that's one more nick. We got him. One more.
Well, and people say that, they had all the podcasts and that's how the Republicans won. Maybe Midas Touch is the first one to get beyond the point of what the Republicans are. And that's, like you say, the one cut to get us at least in the right direction. And God bless them if it works. I hope Midas Touch grows mightily and spreads the truth. But anyway, I'm going to wrap things up here. We've gone about an hour and a half is what we normally do. And I always appreciate people willing to go that long because it's not that easy always. And it is for me when I have somebody smart like you on here. I just kind of throw out something to incite you and sit back and wait for the good answers. That's all I do.
I got revved up a little bit. I had to tell myself to settle down because I get so just infuriated and frustrated. And it's just like, we could just be this most amazing country and be a beacon of light for the whole world. And I know that we can be that, and we can't lose hope or lose sight of what we really want this country to be and how we know we can have a fair and equitable country for everyone. No matter what's happening, we just can't lose sight of that. And I want to just encourage everyone before we go that the three senators that we need to focus on from here on out are Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell. We're going to need to make phone calls with them when big bills come up because we can get them to come on over. They've already shown they can do it. And I can't even believe I'm saying Mitch McConnell, but it's one of those examples of thy enemy of thy enemy is thy friend. And he's already shown he's willing to vote against this. Okay. So moving forward, we need to call them when there's a big bill coming and tell them how are they really going to let Elmo and Dumpy take their power. Senators' most important thing is their power, and we need to appeal to them in that way.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to come on anytime, every time you want. Don't hesitate to email me. I know people, I've had a good run of folks. I had Denise, the historian. I had Ilona. I got you. Tomorrow I got Old Soul. Talk about emotional. That's a whole different deal. You ain't nothing compared to Old Soul. Old Soul really gets wrapped up in this stuff, and I admire her for it. But it's tough sometimes because she wears her emotions on her sleeve, her heart on her sleeve, and I know it's tough for her sometimes. She has to sit and get herself together before she can go on because of things she's upset about. And I appreciate that. I personally don't throw emotions into it. I do have emotions.
But she's in the trenches. Bless her.
She
has
is.
put herself in the trenches. Yeah. We have to really support her because she has done the work for this country and for women in this country. I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. Old Soul walks the walk. There's no question. More so than anybody I've ever met. And I do admire that. So, Kristen, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys can find me on Blue Sky at Kristen Healer. Right. Say hi, and I would love to talk with you there.
Blue Sky at Kristen Healer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Check her out. No, I mean it. Fucking check her out right now.
Thank you.
I know Eric Swalwell helped you get followers.
Mm-hmm.
I want you people to show her what we can do here. You can follow her on Blue Sky. Let's get her up. Let's get a flurry of follows here. It's well worth it. You've just heard her. She's brilliant. She's smart. Fucking follow her on Blue Sky.
Thank you.
Anyway, for those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.